1600.
WWRL.
New York.
An Access One communications radio station.
Kurland's on the air. It's Yetta Kurland live. Yetta Kurland, listen in.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Yetta Kurland Live. I am your host, Yetta Kurland, and tonight we will be talking with International President Larry Hanley of the Amalgamated Transit Union on New York City's first school bus driver strike since 1979. We'll also have State Senator Velmanette Montgomery and Assembly Member David Weprin on Mayoral Control of the Schools, and Reshma Saujani will be with us on Girls Who Code. I first want to thank our media partners, Go Magazine, Labor Press, the Soho Journal, Westview News, City and State New York, and the New Civil Rights Movement for helping make this show happen, as well as our community sponsors, the Ritz and Whole Earth Bakery. You can pick up a copy of Westview News at 69 Charles Street. Check out Go Magazine at your local newsstand or at gomag.com. City and State New York is online at cityandstateny.com, the Soho Journal at sohojournal.com, the New Civil Rights Movement at the newcivilrightsmovement.com, and Labor Press is at laborpress.org. Also, you can listen to us live stream at WWRL1600.com, and please join us on Facebook at Yetta Kurland Live, on Twitter at Yetta Kurland, and check us out on the Huffington Post at huffingtonpost.com/Yetta. This week in the news, New York State passed the most sweeping gun control laws in the country in response to the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary School. In Washington, the House Republicans finally agreed to allow a vote on vitally needed aid for victims of Superstorm Sandy, and it passed with overwhelmingly Democratic votes. In San Francisco, the city is considering naming its airport after the LGBT rights pioneer Harvey Milk. Here in the city, school bus drivers went on strike today for the first time in over 30 years. We'll be talking about the school bus strike, education, and more here on Yetta Kurland Live with Larry Hanley, Velmanette Montgomery, David Weprin, Reshma Saujani, and you, the listeners. So let's get started. We'll go to our first guests. I'll introduce them. Velmanette Montgomery, a senator, has represented North and Central Brooklyn in the New York State Senate since 1985. She is a ranking Democrat on the State Senate Committee on Children and Families and a member of the Education Committee, among others. Prior to her election on the Senate, Montgomery was a teacher, an adjunct professor, and the co-founder of the Daycare Forum of New York City. Also a lifelong advocate, Assembly Member David Weprin has represented Queens in the New York State Assembly as well as in the New York City Council before that for 12 years. I'm delighted to have both of them on the show tonight. Senator Montgomery and Assemblymember Weprin recently introduced legislation to end mayoral control in New York City schools. I'm glad it brings them on our show tonight. If you've got questions or comments for Senator Montgomery or Assemblymember Weprin on education policy or anything else, please call in. Give us a call now at 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Senator, Assemblymember, thank you for coming on Yetta Kurland Live tonight.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, Yetta.
Well, so, and you're doing some exciting stuff up in Albany.
Well, we have gun control, and I think for the most part we're very excited about it, and we hope that that's going to make a big difference in the number of deaths at the end of a gun in our city and our state.
It's very exciting and a model, I would say, for the rest of the country as well. So
absolutely.
Great work. So let's talk about mayoral control. For our listeners who may not be familiar with it, Senator, what's kind of the background? How did it come into existence, and what's the background to that?
Well, the background is that since we've had the situation where the mayor appoints the majority of the members of the PEP, I think it's referred to, there have been many issues around the decisions that get made, to what extent parents have a role or a say, or if there is any appeal process that affords them an opportunity to weigh in and be able to influence decisions. So we decided to introduce legislation early enough before we're required to vote to extend mayoral control. We wanted to have a discussion, and this legislation allows us to do that, allows the parents and community to have a focal point in terms of what we need to be thinking about as it relates to mayoral control going forward.
So instead of just reacting to the question of whether or not to renew mayoral control, which comes up, I think next year, you're hoping to have a preemptive discussion to envision, hopefully, a better way of doing things, I would
Absolutely.
say. And Assemblymember, how, in your opinion, has mayoral control worked over the past 10 years?
Yeah, I don't think it's worked the way it was intended. You know, we had the situation with the Kathy Black debacle, where the mayor arbitrarily chose someone that was clearly not qualified to be chancellor of the city of New York. That appointment alone set back the school system probably about a year. Just the months and months that dragged on, and and all the problems she kept getting into, and then the mayor pulling the plug on her appointment. That would not have happened had Senator Montgomery and my bill become law, because what we have is a new selection of the chancellor. We have input from the borough presidents, from the city council, as well as the mayor, and there is parental input because the members of the board, a number of them, have to be parents of children in the system, and they would actually appoint the chancellor, and the chancellor would report to them and not to the mayor, and you wouldn't have the type of dictatorial situation that occurred as in the situation with Kathy Black.
And I want to get into some of the details of the proposed bill, but let me ask you, Senator Joel Klein, Kathy Black, why are we not putting educators at the forefront of leading us on education as much as we perhaps could be or should be?
Well, unfortunately, the system under mayoral control has become so politicized that the decision for who becomes chancellor is more of a political decision than a decision around bringing in a top educational leader and having it be directed by educational professionals from top to bottom.
Education and politics. You are listening to State Senator Velmanette Montgomery and Assemblymember David Weprin here on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600. Call us with questions or comments, 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Assemblymember, tell us some of the key parts of your legislation. What are you proposing besides just getting rid of mayoral control?
Well, we're basically proposing a new board, similar to, the current board, which is really strictly advisory. And on that board, the mayor would not have the majority of the appointments. The mayor would have 4 appointments. The city council would have 4 appointments. And each of the borough presidents would have 1 appointment each. So it would be a total of 13 members. The majority of those members would appoint a chair of the board. And they would actually select the chancellor and the contract for the chancellor, and the chancellor would report to them. There would also be specific requirements of the members of the board that they would have to have, in many cases, parents. They'd have to be parents of children in the school system. And one of the major problems with mayoral control is parents feel very frustrated that they really have no say in the school system. There were a lot of problems with the old school board. But the good thing about the school boards were that parents actually could testify at monthly meetings and participate in public school board meetings and actually had some input in the process.
Right.
They don't have that anymore.
Right. And Senator, the community education counselors are supposed to provide parent input, as the Assemblymember intimated. These are not binding. This is not binding input. How can we incorporate parents' voices better while still responding and respecting to professional teachers in that process?
Well, I think it's important to note, as Assemblywoman Weprin pointed out, that we're establishing a new role for that entity. In other words, it's now going to be under our bill. It would be independent of the mayor. Right now, the mayor appoints the chancellor.
That's
the
right.
change that we're proposing is that the Board of Ed or the PEP would actually appoint the chancellor. Chancellor is then responsible to that board and the students and the system, and not directly to the mayor. So we believe that creating an entity that is independent of the mayoral control of it gives us more of an opportunity to have educational decisions made that are more to the benefit of students in the system and the school community, as opposed to being responsible solely to the mayor.
Independent
As a matter of fact,
students.
one of the requirements of the membership is that they cannot work for the city at all in any capacity. So it would really kind of make the members independent of a job, because, as you know, the mayor very often has appointed for these advisory boards members of his own administration or members that he has some form of control over, and that, of course, questions their independence.
Right.
And we're suggesting that several of the appointees by the city council be in different categories. For instance, we're suggesting that one of those appointments be a person who is involved in higher education, because we think that we're now looking at a system that is 1 through 13, 14, or 15, as opposed to just being 1 through 12.
So that's interesting. So the criteria would also include a background or an expertise in a certain type of educational level.
Exactly. At the higher ed level.
Would also be involved. We have a bunch of folks calling in. Let's go to some of these callers. We're going to go to Mary Ellis from East Flatbush. Mary Ellis, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the show. Are you there with us?
Good evening, everybody. This is Mary Alice.
Hi, Mary Alice. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. I wanted to ask, in crafting your bill, could you take into consideration the privatization of jobs? It's not just the school bus drivers, although they are the most recent ones. It's right before the beginning of this current school term, the long-term school aides who worked with disabled students had their salaries cut in half, because the mayor took their job from the Department of Education and put them under the management of employment agents. And just today I heard of a woman who was working as an adult educator, and her job was eliminated after 22 years because those jobs were privatized too, which takes away the ability to have people be professionals and work in their job and then take home a salary in which they can pay their bills and then go back and work with.
Sure. And have long-term experience and have job protection. Thank you for your question, Mary. Assemblymember Senator, you want to address that question?
Well, Mary Alice, absolutely. When I was in the city council, I was a strong opponent of some of the privatization efforts that Mayor Bloomberg and the administration proposed. You're very often talking about privatizing individuals that are really not highly paid, that really need job security, that need the benefits that come with the job and the protection, and basically union members. And the mayor has often, in these privatization, been able to pay people less money and give less benefits because they're not unionized workers. And I think New York City, works, and in other major municipalities, even though a lot of workers are not very highly paid, the fact that they're union members, that they're protected by the union, that they are assured of, certain benefits as well as job security. I'm a strong believer in the union movement,
as well as oversight and supervision of the work that they're doing. Which, let's address one of the, I don't know if it's a misnomer, but workers are often pitted against our students. Senator, what do you say to people who say, who cares about job security for the teachers? That actually takes away from our students.
Well, I think what we're looking for is developing a system that reflects the priorities and the interests and the concerns of all of the members of the school community.
Well, this is something I never understood. I mean, isn't it true that if you have employees who are enjoying their job, are being taken care of, are able to take holidays and vacation, to get oversight and training and supervision that the UFT, that a union would provide, doesn't that make them better employees? Doesn't that investing? I never understood the dichotomy between investing in employees being something that harms students. Where do you think that comes from? And do you think that there really is, is Bloomberg's agenda here to make the schools better, or is it really to privatize?
Well, my concern is that this mayor has not been supportive of the idea of having a strong union for employees across the board in school and in other areas as well. So whether that's a political bent or an ideological or personal whatever, it does not necessarily reflect the interest of us having strong school personnel, school teachers, administrators, and supporting them in a way that where there is a need for a person to have some additional resources, additional support, we look to provide that as opposed to punishing people because we think that they don't deserve our support.
To say nothing of parental involvement, community involvement as well. You're listening to State Senator Velmanette Montgomery and Assemblymember David Weprin here on Yetta Kurland Live. Let's try to squeeze in some more callers. We're going to go next to Lisa from the East Village. Lisa, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Hey, good evening.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to extend my gratitude to Senator Montgomery and Assemblymember Weprin for this brave move to try to democratize the PEP and start to break up the dictatorship of mayoral control that's led to about a dozen years of failed education policy. And I was wondering if they might be considering any other legislation that would bring some checks and balances and especially some opportunities for parents, community members, teachers, and students to start to make decisions about our community schools.
Well, I want to point out that the proposal that putting forward essentially would make the board a majority parents. So that's one of what I think is strengths of this legislation as well. I've also introduced legislation that would prevent the state education department from providing a waiver that any person who is looking to become chancellor would have to meet the standards and the criteria for the educational criteria for someone who is going to be chancellor. The other bill that I've introduced, which I think we passed, both houses passed, but I think it was vetoed last time, we'll do it again, is a bill that would require the state education department and the Board of Regents to actually hold meetings in the city, at least 2 annually, so that parents are able to be part of, or at least be able to hear directly from state ed, the commissioner and the Board of Regents, just what the proposals are being made in terms of educational standards statewide.
Let me ask you a question. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about what you're saying, and I love the idea of these standards and qualifications, because as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, we have all of this criteria and requirements for making our teachers the best, the brightest, the most talented, which is fantastic and we want to encourage. But frankly, you're right. We don't have a lot of that criteria when it comes to the chancellor. Why do you think that is?
Well, they get a waiver. They go to the State Department of Education and request that those standards be waived in order to appoint this person or that person, i.e. in the case of Chancellor Black, that's what happened. She had no qualifications, yet she received a waiver, and Klein as well.
Yeah.
So that is what we're trying to to make sure that doesn't happen.
You know, we're talking a lot about getting money out of politics. Maybe we need to get politics out of education a little bit. Assemblymember, what's been the response from your colleagues in the Assembly or also in the Senate in terms of this bill? Are people saying, you know, it's provocative to even imagine ending mayoral control? Have people been supportive? What's the general feeling in Albany?
Well, I think most people feel it's important to have the discussion. Even though we're not going to actually be renewing mayoral control, I think it's about 2 years. It sunsets and it's got to be renewed. Mm-hmm. This is obviously a mayoral year election. You know, Mayor Bloomberg is ending his 12 years, and I felt very strongly he should not have had his third term because, you know, he kind of overrode the will of the people after 2 public referendums.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that issue at all.
So I know Yetta, you and I, and many press conferences on the steps of City Hall, fighting against that.
Yeah.
But that's a topic for another show.
Day.
But certainly, I think everybody appreciates discussion, airing it, and the fact that it is a mayoral year, and Mayor Bloomberg is finishing his last year. I think now is the appropriate time to really debate it, discuss it. The other thing that has really bothered me about the Department of Education under this administration is the outside contracting budget, and it goes back to what the caller before brought up about privatization. I think it was Mary Alice brought up about privatization. The outside contracting budget of the Department of Education is now over $1 billion a year.
Right.
$1 billion that could be put into the system.
Yeah.
That could be applied to schools, to the classroom, to workers, instead of these outside consultants that are really just there to bring the statistics up, to play with the outside testing.
You know, David, we need to get you on the show to talk. That's a whole nother conversation. I mean, that's and the question of whether or not contracting, the only argument that they make is that it saves money. You could probably argue that it in fact doesn't when you talk about all the collateral costs that are incurred.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you one last question to piggyback on that. And it's a broad, you sat on the city council, you're now an assembly member. I think, you know, both you and the senator understand city politics. Like, is it a thing where, like, mayoral control as a concept is bad, or is it that this mayor has used it in a way that has harmed the unions and has harmed the role of community and parents? Meaning, is it specific to this administration, or is it a concept that needs to be remedied?
My personal opinion is that I'm opposed to mayoral control. I do not believe that we should have this significant system that educates over 1 million children every year in the city, that we should leave that in the hands of one single, the highest, most politicized position in the city. We need to have a system where decisions get made to the best of our ability by those people who are not beholden to a political process, or that it's not politicized to the point where we can't get decisions that are in the best interest of the children in that system, the educators in that system, and the process and procedures that lead, hopefully, to children's progress.
Yeah, well said. I'm going to try to squeeze in. We got a bunch of people lighting up the screens. I want to try to squeeze in a couple more calls if possible. I'm going to go next to Mike Riley from DC 31 calling in. Mike, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Hi, this is Mike Riley from Community Education Council 31 in Staten Island. I just want to say I applaud the Assemblyman and the Senator for trying to revamp mayoral control. This goes a long way in giving parents some voice because it's lacking now. I mean, one example is recently a resolution we passed for safety and security throughout New York City public schools. Chancellor Walcott and Mayor Bloomberg refused to listen to it even before we passed it as a council. And, he went as far as, the mayor and chancellor went as far as saying that CECs do not have any statutory authority on safety and security under the law, so we're not even going to consider their proposal. But then a week later, they put out the recruitment ad for the Community Education Council upcoming elections, and Chancellor Walcott says CECs are a valuable way for parents to have their voices heard. Unfortunately, what is Mr. Walcott's real position on this? Either parents have a say or they don't.
And obviously it's difficult if in statutorily you actually don't have a say, so it's the will of what is going on in the moment. Well, thank you so much for calling in.
Resolution, that's what we do. We put out recommendations.
Good. Well, I'm sure the senator and the assembly member will be looking for your help.
The advisory role makes it almost, has no purpose. If the mayor and the chancellor are going to say it's dead on arrival before they even hear what the proposal is, it just shows that you don't need this CEP in that type of advisory role.
Yeah. You said democratizing the process. I'm going to squeeze in one last caller. I know we have a few more on stack, but I'm going to take Mona from the Parents Union. Mona, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Hi, Yetta. Hi, Senator Montgomery.
Hi, Mona.
Weprin. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for all your work in this area.
Oh, no, thank you. And I don't even know how to begin thanking you and Assemblyman Weprin for introducing this legislation to change the composition of the PEP. I would like to add one thing. Although mayoral control is going to sunset in 2015, we all understand that it is a mayoral race going on, and I'm pretty certain that come January 2014, whoever our mayor may be, he or she, they will be introducing tweaks. So I'm so happy that we have a head start in this conversation on what their possible tweaks could possibly be for whatever they envision their version, in quotes, of mayoral control to be. So I thank you so much for listening to the cries and the outrage from the parents and the communities in New York City, because we really have no voice, no say at all in what goes on in our schools. And we look forward to continuing to work with you and the assemblymen on other legislation, including empowering community education councils, because they have no authority in our schools, and they really, really should.
And as you know, and thank you for all of the work that you've done, Mona. You're so valuable to us. But I want to just point out that one of the requirements of one of the appointments by the city council is that that one member, at least one member, be a current community education council person. So we've tried to really think about the entire education school community and ways in which we can bring them into the legislation so that they have an official statutory role in what happens to education in this city.
Yeah, it's great. And listen, one last plug before we let you guys go. Assemblymember, Senator, if folks want to get involved, obviously we've heard from parents, from other advocates, and from folks in the community. If people want to get involved, they want to support the work that you're doing, how do they learn more, and how do they get involved?
Well, let me just say that I'll give you the numbers of the current school governance mayoral control bill. It's Senate 1406A, and it's Assembly 792. And when you can get either of us on the official state website, and you can locate the legislation, and please write to us, call us, let us know what you're thinking. If you have some ideas for any changes that you think we should consider in the language, that's really what we would like very much to hear. And we would hope that this could become the means by which parents and educators and people in the city can make their position known.
And some real reform for much needed. Well, thank you so much, both of you, the senator and assembly member. We're going to get you back on the show down the road to see how this is all going. Thank you for the work that you're doing on behalf of parents and teachers and students throughout the city. And we're going to take a short break. When we return, we'll be talking with folks from 1181 and the school bus driver strike.
Okay, thank you, Yetta.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yetta.
Spreading the word.
It's really about New Yorkers looking at us and saying we want equality.
Equality Pride Radio, 10 p.m. to 12 midnight on AM 1600 WWRL. 1600.
Are back here on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600, AM Equality Pride Radio. My next guest is incredibly busy today, I'm sure, so we're thankful to have him on with us. He is the international president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, Lawrence J. Hanley. The Amalgamated Transit Union represents over 190,000 members throughout the United States and Canada, composed of bus drivers, light rail operators, maintenance and clerical personnel, and other transit and municipal employees. He began his career as a bus driver in Brooklyn with the MTA in 1978. I guess that's a year before the last strike of ATU. So 8,000 members of the ATU Local 1181, mostly school bus drivers and aides, walked off the job today in the city's first school bus strike since 1979. I'm honored and delighted that it brings Larry Hanley to our show tonight. If you've got questions or comments, please call in 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Larry, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. Thank you for taking time out of what I can imagine is a very busy day to talk to us.
No, Yetta, actually, I was just rearranging my sock drawer, and no.
It was a down day for you.
Thank you for the opportunity. We're having a very busy time. You're right.
Yeah,
it's pleased to be here.
It's been incredible to see the updates in the news feeds throughout the day. So what's at stake in this strike for your members?
Well, it's really what's at stake for working people, not only in the city but across the country. This is a Wisconsin style, and I don't want to besmirch the good people of Wisconsin, but it is a Scott Walker Wisconsin style attack on some of the lower paid people who do work for the people of the city of New York. In this case, we represent transit workers in this town. We also represent the school bus industry, and in the school bus industry, our members work for private companies, and they do work for the city, and we've been there for more than 50 years, and we've lived with a stable agreement for most of that time.
Do you feel like transit workers are especially vulnerable to the efforts to privatize or union bust, as you're talking about Scott Walker?
Well, you know, anyone who does work for a municipality is susceptible to it, but there is a global effort. There are multinational corporations who are behind the scenes pulling strings in Congress and in localities. For example, Nassau County recently privatized the entire bus operation. That was brought to us courtesy of a company that is partially owned by the French government, Veolia, who came into town and hired Al D'Amato to facilitate the takeover of what was a public service for many years.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing we're experiencing all over the country, and this is just the Bloomberg version of it.
Yeah, let me ask you. So in your intro, I said, you started working as a bus driver in Brooklyn in 1978, and I know you guys struck, I guess, in 1979. What's different between today and back then?
Well, actually, in 1978, I was a transit worker working for the New York City Transit Authority. I was not involved in the school bus industry, but I can tell you that the mood in America has certainly changed since then. It is much more anti-worker, and the wealthy people in this country have gotten great advantages that they did not have then. So it's a harder struggle. But I can tell you, we are confident. In this case, the people of the city of New York are by and large behind us. They understand that there is no city worker right now that has a contract and not because all of us can negotiate with the mayor, but the mayor refuses to negotiate with us.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible that this kind of happens. And like you said, it's not just your union. You mentioned transit workers. I was speaking to Marvin Holland from TW Local 100 earlier. He sends his regards, is standing in solidarity with you guys. I know District 15, the machinists. Are you getting a lot of support from fellow brothers and sisters in labor who are getting behind you with this?
Oh, absolutely. Matter of fact, we began to meet with other unions in this town on January 4th to outline what was happening, and we have had huge support. The Central Labor Council, Vinny Alvarez, who runs that, and Mario Salento with the AFL-CIO, along with all the other unions in town, have really been instrumental in first trying to head this off and bring the mayor to his senses.
Yeah.
But now they're lining up completely to support us and fight back.
That's wonderful. I don't want to keep you on the line for too much longer, but I want to hit on two issues, and then I want to get people involved if there's a way for them to get involved. First of all, what do you say to parents who are struggling to get their kids to school this week? What's at stake for New York City parents and students in this strike as well?
Well, I think the parents need to understand that what we're fighting for is having consistent employment in the industry, which means experienced drivers. If, in fact, the mayor is successful in Walmartizing the school bus industry, what will happen is we will have a constant churning of low-wage workers who never develop the skills that it takes to deal with not just driving the bus, but the matrons who take care of the children on the bus, the matrons who take care of developmentally disabled children and get them safely to and from school.
Right.
It's really an industry that goes far beyond just transportation. And if the parents can support us and help us fight back, in the long run, they will be able to help us maintain experienced workers in those jobs.
Yeah, well paid, with oversight, supervision, all the things that make those bus drivers even better for their job, for the safety of the children. So with that, what's the average salary of an ATU 1181 member today?
Under $40,000. We estimate it to be $38,000.
Wow.
For the ATU drivers and matrons combined.
Wow. And how are your members holding up?
Very good. The picket lines were strong today. We expect them to continue to be strong. And, I'm in here from Washington, not just speaking as the president of this union, but speaking on behalf of the 200,000 people we represent in two countries, to make sure that these workers get the support they need. Well,
all eyes are definitely looking to you. We're gonna take one quick caller, Ed from the Upper West Side. Ed, you're on Yetta Kurland Live. Just a quick question to Larry Hanley.
Yes. Do you think that the mayor has a problem with unions generally, that he just can't handle the notion that somebody's going to challenge what he says?
Larry, you want to comment?
I could not hear that question. I'm sorry.
He was asking.
Do you think the mayor seems to have a problem with unionized labor generally?
Does the mayor have a problem with unions in general? Or do they think that unions are?
Read the mayor's book. The mayor absolutely wrote a book probably about 15 years ago in which he laid out his complete disregard not only for unions, but for the law, for union rules. He talked about when he formed his business in the early days, how he personally violated every union rule, every labor law, every zoning law, every electrical code in town so that he could make money. He bragged about it.
He says this as a badge of pride, right?
Absolutely.
Well, listen, I don't want to keep you long, but how long do you think this is going to go? And most importantly, what can our listeners do to express their support?
Well, first, they should know the truth. And I can tell you, and this will emerge more and more in the coming days because we are now trying to document what I'm about to say. The mayor is hinging this notion of the strike that he first announced, by the way. On December 21st, he announced what he was doing, and he announced the strike without talking to us. And by the way, he has not talked to the union ever on this. His emissaries have refused to speak to us as well. Two things you need to know. First, the mayor says that his hands are tied. It's against the law to do anything. That's nonsense. That is a complete fabrication. He is talking about a lawsuit that has really very little, if anything, to do with this situation. And we'll be talking more about that in the coming days. But also, he's wringing his hands about the high cost of people transportation and somehow connecting that to the workers. The workers in the ATU who have been driving these buses since 1979 have had less wage increases than comparable city workers.
Yeah.
They certainly have not exceeded anyone in this city in terms of wage inflation. And the mayor is laying at our doorstep 1,600% inflation. That has to do, and this is a lie, that has to do with the fact that the service has expanded, it has grown, and the number of handicapped, disabled children that are using the system has exploded, which is a good thing that we're serving that community. But the mayor is trying to blame the higher costs on the workers, and it's an absolute lie.
An all too familiar story. Larry, how can folks get involved? Is there a website? Is there a place to go? Is there something to do to show solidarity, show support with the workers, the members who are on strike?
Join us on the picket lines, and we will be doing massive literature distribution in the city in the coming days. ATU.org is the International's website, and we'll certainly have information there. And just follow our website, and we will give people information on what they can do.
Great. We'll be watching you. Thank you so much, Larry, for your time, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Yetta.
You got it.
Thanks.
All right. Well, that was Larry Hanley of the Amalgamated Transit Union. Larry has been working hard today. I imagine it'll be the same tomorrow. We're going to go to our next guest, Reshma Saujani. She is extremely accomplished. She is an activist, an attorney, and an organizer. She's a former deputy public advocate of New York City, and she is the executive director of the Fund for Public Advocacy. She is currently a candidate for public advocate for the city of New York as well. We'll talk to her about that a bit, but we also want to hear about an organization Saujani has founded called Girls Who Code. If you've got questions or comments for Reshma Saujani on Girls Who Code or anything else, please give us a call, 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Reshma, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Yetta. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's been an interesting evening. A lot of stuff is happening in the news in New York City today.
A lot's happening.
So let's talk about Girls Who Code. What was the inspiration for that? How did that come to be?
Sure. So, when I ran for Congress in 2010, my district was like the east side of Manhattan and in Astoria, Queens. And you'd be in the Upper East Side, and you'd literally see iPads coming out of these kids' ears. And then you'd be in Astoria,
I think
Queens.
they're born with them today.
Right.
Yeah.
Kids were hard-pressed to find a computer that works or a teacher to show them how to use it. And you saw the power of technology to either increase poverty, right, or decrease it. And in particular, I felt like we really needed to focus on our girls. A recent report came out that there's like 1.4 million jobs that are open in the computing-related fields, but less than 29% of our workforce has the skill set to fill them, right? Less than 20% of that 29% are women. And I really wanted to close the gender gap in this job industry. So created Girls Who Code, which is a nonprofit, a national movement to teach teenage girls how to computer program. We launched in New York. We had 22 girls. The average age was, 15 from every single borough of New York City. We taught them how to build a website, how to build a mobile app, how to have a conversation with an engineer about your business plan.
Right. 20% is a very small amount of that 29%.
Unbelievable.
I mean, obviously it's not a secret that there's gender discrimination, but that seems like an even larger gap. Why do you think that is?
Well, I'll tell you what it's not. There's not an aptitude problem, right? Girls and boys are good at math and science, pretty much the same, right? But I think that we live in a society and a culture that pushes girls away from math and science and technology, right? We can walk into Forever 21 and buy a T-shirt that says math sucks, right? When girls...
Do they sell them there? I didn't even know that.
They totally sell them there. Yeah. I bought one like a year ago. Girls, when they think about what a computer scientist is, they think about a boy sitting at a computer kind of typing, right? Girls want to change the world, right? And they don't recognize yet that if they have access to technology, they can help change the world.
And there's something inventive and precocious about, coding and right, you have to be able to feel confident in yourself, make mistakes, show up, and kind of adjust and learn as you go.
Right. And you need parents and teachers who are pushing you in that direction, who are telling you that this is where the jobs are at, right? One out of 7 engineers will be a woman. And as we're moving from an economy, from a manufacturing-based to a service-based economy, we need women to be in these fields.
Absolutely, and technology is growing all the time. Pioneering women and Girls Who Code. You're listening to Reshma Saujani here on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600. Call us with questions or comments, 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Let's go to our next caller, Allie from the Upper West Side. Allie, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Hi. Thanks for having me on the air.
Sure.
I think it's really awesome that you've put together Girls Who Code. I actually have been dating a programmer for a while, and 90% of what he does is complete. It's like a foreign language to me. So my question for you is, I understand that the program is for younger girls, but what about, women my age who are in their 20s and 30s and who,
Well, first of all, it's terrifying to me that 20s and 30s is considered not younger, but go ahead with your question, Allie.
For those of us who are sort of mid-career and feel that we're a bit stunted now because we'd like to move ahead, but without having the skills to write a mobile app or to create our own websites, what kind of advice do you have for us, and what resources are out there to, say, teach ourselves those kind of skills?
Such a great question. So, one of my girls, Julia, who's 15, would come home every day, and her dad was like, "What are you doing?" And she started teaching him how to code, right? He's going from being a substitute custodian, right, working 2 days a week to feed, 5 children, to now taking programming classes. So, as part of what I'm doing is running for public advocate is I want to try to build adult coding classes. So we're talking to Monroe College, we're talking to LaGuardia Community College, we're talking to Flatiron School, because there are so many jobs that are open in our city that are simply not being filled. And quite frankly, if we can teach 15-year-old girls how to code, I can teach you how to code, Allie.
It's interesting, too, because it breaks down the assumption that people who are older, even if that's 20 or 30 or 40 or 50, can't learn technology, but they absolutely can
pick it up.
And it's also interesting because as I'm listening to you, the other thing is we unfortunately have been taught in this society that certain jobs are for men and certain jobs are for women, but technology to a certain degree is a whole new field, and we can invent. We don't have to assume those things, and girls can show up and take up space and define who does coding.
And the other thing, is 85% of all consumer purchases are made by women. We Facebook more, we tweet more, we blog more. We own the internet, right? We should be designing it.
Girls owning the internet. You are listening to Reshma Saujani on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600. Let's go to some more callers. We're going to take Josh from Park Slope. Josh, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Thank you very much, Yetta. And I just want to say congratulations on your filing. I know you're probably not allowed to talk about that, but good job.
Thank you.
And my question for Reshma is, how do you feel about the lack of representation for the South Asian community in New York City politics? It seems like it's terribly underrepresented, and I know you're out there trying to change that, and I was wondering if you might have some thoughts about that or want to talk about that.
Yeah, it's a huge issue, right? We don't even have a South Asian that's elected anywhere in New York City or anywhere in New York State, even though we're one of the largest, we're a growing population. If you don't feel the South Asian community today, you're going to feel it in 4 years.
Yeah. How many Southeast Asian elected officials are there, do you know, in either New York City or New York
State?
Seriously, zero?
Seriously,
wow.
zero.
Wow.
Zero.
Wow.
And that's why I think there's so much excitement around, our candidacy and running for public advocate.
So it'd be a moot question if I asked how many Southeast Asian women are elected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Zero, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And we don't want to count Nikki Haley.
Okay.
So we need to make sure that we increase our numbers. Look, when I ran for Congress in 2010, we probably increased the South Asian vote by 40%. So they're out there. They're a significant voting bloc, especially in Queens and Bronx and Manhattan. And so, it's really important for our community to not only participate, but to get out there and vote and to run for office. And, I'm so excited. I feel like every other week a young South Asian candidate is coming to me and saying, I want to run. Mm-hmm. How do I do it? Mm-hmm. And we've got a lot of great reception from the progressive community, both in labor and with elected officials who want to see this community succeed, right? Who want to see them get a voice.
What was your inspiration or your entree? What was the motivator to get involved in electoral politics?
My parents came here as political refugees from Uganda.
Oh, wow.
Right? And this country literally saved their lives. And I always say, I think from the womb, I was inspired. I wanted to serve. I wanted to give back to my country.
You're listening to Reshma Saujani here on Yetta Kurland Live, WWRL 1600. We got lots of callers. We're going to try to get to as many of them as we can. Next, we are going to go to Mark from Brooklyn. Mark, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Hi. My question is, what qualifies you as the public advocate to speak for all New Yorkers?
Okay.
What
would qualify? You are not the public advocate now, so what would you're running for public advocate? What would qualify you to speak for all New Yorkers?
Well, in this particular office, I've been the deputy public advocate, and so I've had experience in the office. It's a really challenging position. Right? The budget of the office has been significantly cut. You have a really small staff to represent 8 million people. Mm-hmm. And, even right now, people still think Mark Green's the public advocate, mm-hmm. right? So there's a lot of, I think, that needs to happen with understanding what the office does. I think that there's an enormous amount of potential for the office to speak for those who quite frankly, don't have a voice. A lot of the work that I did as deputy was, I started a fellowship program to help undocumented students get access to college, the Dream Fellowship. I did a survey on immigrant entrepreneurs who are 50% of all small business owners in New York City who don't have access to capital, who don't have access to resources,
Sure.
who don't know how to reach out to city government and get help. We did a lot of work on Citizens United, mobilizing pension trustees to get the money out of politics. So I think that the public advocate plays a huge role in New York City if the right public advocate is in office.
And what about the fact that the public advocate's budget has been so greatly reduced? How does that impact it, and are there ways to overcome that?
Yeah, I ran the Fund for Public Advocacy, which is a 501c3 within the office, and we increased the budget almost by $1 million to do these programs that I talked about. So that's kind of the way. The second thing isn't, look, I did a lot of work after Sandy. It's, you can really there's so many advocates in this city. Yeah, you're an advocate, right? You can galvanize advocates all across New York City through technology, through civic engagement, and get them to actually help other New Yorkers in need.
We have an email response from one of our listeners who say that girls don't own the internet, little kittens do. Now that's probably subjective, but I just wanted to let you know. What do you think the biggest problems facing New York City are, and as a public advocate, how do you solve them?
I think it's really income inequity. And I've seen this and I think a lot of it stems from education, right? My parents came here with nothing. And the only reason why I'm standing here right now was because of education. And I went to public schools, went to a public university. And so I think that we have got to give kids an opportunity to get the best education possible. And that will take families and literally uplift them out of poverty.
Great. Let's try to squeeze in one more caller before the end of the segment. We are going to go to Jack from the West Village. Jack, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Hey, it's Jack. I think you have some great ideas there. I just wanted to ask you about your campaign and you've run some pretty opportunistic campaigns. When you ran against Carolyn Maloney, you moved into the district, and then you moved over to the public advocate's office, and you're running for that seat. Can you argue effectively that this isn't a campaign based off, just sheer political opportunity?
Well, look, I lived in the district when I ran, and I didn't move into the district to run. I moved in because I ran for that office because I wanted to serve. And after I lost my race in 2010, and I lost miserably, 80-20, right? I was totally broke, and the only thing that I kept thinking about was the commitments that I had made to people on the campaign trail, and those were commitments that I wanted to keep. And I got an opportunity to serve my city as a deputy public advocate and to create, to do Girls Who Code, to teach underserved girls how to code, to help undocumented students, get access to education. And to me, that's not opportunistic. That's like being a good New Yorker.
Well said. Well, and if elected as a public advocate, what would be the first thing that you did in your role as public advocate?
The first thing that I would want to do is really close this access gap with technology and education. 76% of New York City public school students report that they don't have access to computers in schools. That's wrong.
Did you weigh in on mayoral? We just had David Weprin and Senator Montgomery talking about mayoral control. Do you have any position on that?
Look, I think that one of the biggest problems with mayoral control is it's taken parents' voices out of the conversation. And one of the things that with Girls Who Code, these girls were successful because their parents were allowed to be engaged, right? And we have to get their voices back in the dialogue.
Great. And if people want to get involved, they want to learn more, is there somewhere they can go to learn about what you're doing?
For Girls Who Code, go to our website, www.girlswhocode.com, and for our campaign, go to reshmafornewyork.com.
So if a 15-year-old or a 25-year-old, 35-year-old is listening in, what are some of the programs that you offer in Girls Who
So we're
Code?
going to be launching 3 programs in New York City this summer. So applications are going to be up probably at the end of March. So every girl, every parent, go out there and apply to be in our program.
What if you aren't a coder now, it just interests you, but you know nothing, don't know the first thing about coding? Is it still?
I would check out Code Academy, which is a great place to
Code Academy.
You can learn online.
It's very Harry Potter-ish.
It's free, and it's a great place.
Is there Quidditch involved? No Quidditch. I'm sorry. Where do you go for Code Academy?
So it's basically codeacademy.com.
Codeacademy.com. You spell that with K's or C's?
With C's.
Okay. So even if you don't have coding experience, but you want to get involved, you can. If you do have coding experience, you can apply. And when will
No, you don't have to. If you have no coding experience, you can still apply to Girls Who Code.
And where do people go to apply?
Girlswhocode.com.
Great.
And there's the application on the website.
Great. Reshma, thank you so much for coming on the air. We'll have you back again soon. You've been listening to Reshma Saujani here on Yetta Kurland Live. Thanks for listening. We'll be back again next week on WWRL 1600 Equality Pride Radio.
preceding program was independently produced. The views and opinions expressed were those of the program host and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of WWRL, its staff, or management.
Hey, I appreciate you doing a testimonial for us.
You guys changed my life.
Well, thanks.
I'm on the radio?
Yep.
I'm on the air?
Yep.
And nobody